That's it playing. Right, guys. So, once I've got, so what I've got here is like 40 feet of, you can see it's quite thin, but it's very heavy, like T18 line. Yep. And just so I'm not doing this with a piece of wool or anything, that's a big heavy tungsten fly. That's so it's really heavy. Everything's really heavy. But the whole idea of this demonstration is to show you really how easy this is when you don't get tangled up and stuff in the bunk. How easy it is to deal with a sink line, as long as you follow two really simple things that you have to understand about fishing the sink line. So this are they. God almighty, how could you possibly get wound up? So this line is sinking at about maybe 8 inches per second. It's right. I mean, if you had no current here, it would just be going straight down. And the line itself is 40 feet in the head, and then I've got some mono, which I don't really like, running line. Personally, I don't think if you're fishing with a sinking line, you'd want to have this mono running line, to be honest. I think it would be much better to have some other type of running line, because then you'd get a hold of it. You don't want to cast this thing for miles anyway. For fishing a sinking line, very often you're fishing a part of the river. So when I say a part of the river, you really are concentrating on getting the fly down in a specific part of the river, i.e. maybe, in this case, it might be out there just on the edge of the stream, but guaranteed this line, when it comes off the edge of that stream and you've no current, it's just going to go straight to the bottom, you know. So for fishing these lines, it's all about length, getting the length of the cast right, and getting the depth of the fly right, you know. So anyway, most people, when they have problems with the sinking line, it's because they don't get the line onto the surface when they're making the Speycast, you know. It's nearly always the case. So this one will definitely be in the bottom now. We'll just get the whole head length out so that we can see what we're doing here. So what I would do is I would roll it onto the surface first, you know. Now you can see, if you did notice, that one, the heavy tungsten fly that I've got there, didn't come to the surface. It didn't come at all. So now I know under the water there, I've got a slack line and a bit back to the tungsten thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go really slowly, really slow. I can feel it coming onto the surface. Then the roll cast becomes an absolute doddle. If you do, I mean, I've only got 40 foot of line, but if I make a slow lift in this roll cast, look, everything's now on the surface, including the tungsten line, the tungsten fly, and it's really easy to deal with. However, if I make the classic mistake that people make with the sinking line, and when the whole thing's like here, and I go, I can't cast the spey line. The only reason is that whole line plus the fly isn't on the surface. That is absolutely the whole reason. So, two ways of getting it on the surface. When you've got slack because of a bad cast and you can see that the whole line didn't straighten out, then what we do is nice and slow, make your roll cast nice and slow, and cast it over. Nice. If you don't see the whole thing straightening out, cast it again until it's straight, you know. What I would then say is, this is the really key part of it. If you are using that technique to make your cast, to get the line onto the surface, if you're using the roll cast technique to get it on the surface, don't stand and say, oh, that was a nice cast, that was great, and give it even 1 second. If you let that sit for 1 second, that is below the surface again. It's got a heavy fly, heavy sink that is below the surface. Yesterday and throughout the days, you'll hear me talking about connections. connection. Each part of a Speycast is always connected to the next. We talked about it, Andrea, for sure. So that's rolling out. As soon as that's rolling out, I'm beginning to lift the rod to the key position. So watch here. I'll do the whole thing as I should. So here's the roll. As it's rolling out, I'm already lifting. I'm keeping tension in the line. And then because this line is dense and it's on the surface, it's in exactly the same place as your floating line is now, it's an absolute doddle to cast. It really is. And into a wind, no problem at all. But the key is getting it on the surface, and as it's rolling out, lifting. As it's rolling out, that's a massive part of it. As this is rolling out, then lift. That keeps tension in the line, it keeps the line on the surface. Then casting it becomes just so easy. It's unreal. It's probably easier than a floating line, especially in a wind, or you know, if you've got poor conditions. It really is easy. So that's one way of doing it. The other way, not so good in a place like this because I've not got the current to keep the line up. But the other way is I would just do a high lift. It's all about getting on the surface. There it is. So I can just make my lift, adjust the height of my lift, because the whole purpose of that lift is to bring the line onto the surface. Nothing more. That's it. That's taking the whole thing onto the surface. Massively important. Yeah. So I can make my lift. It's still subsurface, now it's good. And I can make my cast really quite easily. Especially so with this very short sinking lines. I mean, when we used to fish like a wet sail 2, I mean, that was a nightmare thing to cast, and you had to be smack on the money. It was like, I think yesterday, Brett, you asked me about spey lines and long lines. Why would you do that? With a sinking line now, I would never do that. I would never, ever cast a big, long sinking line. There's no point, you know. A little short 40-foot sinking line like this, make sure it's on the surface. As it's going out, you're lifting. Everything becomes really easy. If you watch my rod from the time I make my forward cast on the roll cast, if you watch my rod, you'll see it never stops. Just watch. Just look for that. So here, nice and slow, getting my hands into the correct position. Everything's slow. As it's going down, I'm already lifting my rod. I've got so much time. As long as I keep tension in that line, I have got masses of time. However, if I stop, here we go, make the perfect roll cast on the surface. Oh, great, that's a good roll cast. We'll go for it now. Nothing, because that's already down below the surface. You have to keep going. So when you make your roll cast with a sinking line, a full sinking line, always remember, when that's happened, that you're just midway through the prep before the swing. Yep.
Is it any different at all if you're using a fast sinking tip, like a 15-foot fast sinking tip?
No, they're exactly the same approach. Yeah. The very same. The very same. I mean, you give me absolutely anything that's on the market, and I will cast it simply, easily, using that technique.
Okay, and then one other question.
Yep.
So sometimes when you're fishing, like fishing across the river, and you're going into a deep area.
Yes.
And you've got either a sinking line or a massive sinking tip.
Yep.
How do you get your fly out from a back eddy?
From a back eddy?
Yes, when the water's coming back around and it's all, you know, so you're fishing this bit lovely.
Yep.
And then the end of the cast, when it's fished out,
yep,
the fly is automatically sort of coming back towards you rather
yep,
than
okay.
going away.
Yep, for sure. So this, I can simulate it here as much as I can anyway, you know, because now it's all slack and it's in this area here. So that is about a slow lift, 1. Slow lift, 2.
Right.
Done.
Do that until it comes
Just really slowly. Never try and move that rod fast until the stuff's on top. Until it's on top. Has to be on top, Brett. Definitely. 100%. Definitely. And then it becomes simple. It's really, really easy. There's nothing difficult about it. In fact, probably, like I say, in conditions like this, fishing a sinking line is probably easier than fishing a floating line because it's more dense. It's going to cut through the wind much easier, you know. But this kind of T18 thing, to be honest, I'm just doing this for demonstrating, because there's nowhere on the Spey, or maybe on the Tay possibly, but not many places in Scotland would be using this. Maybe off a boat on the Tay or the Tweed or something like that. Okay. Anything more, guys, girls? Any? No, good. We're good. Well, that's it. Honestly, that's all the information you ever need to know about casting the sinking line. Definitely, about the key to casting it, the reel. But the lifting of the rod, I mean, that's mega important in every single Spey cast. Really, really, with regard getting a really good anchor for sure. Yep. Okay, guys, girls, that'll do. I was just kind of hoping that I didn't get a pull in there. That would have been a bit of a nightmare, because I had no hook on. Aye. All right. There we go. Friggy. Right, good.